You guys want bloopers, right?
Yay!
Alright, here's the short version. So, there's an opera going on, and the terrorists interrupt it. So, while the Ukrainian police are put in the situation, our main CIA operative, the protagonist, who is named Protagonist, joins in to try and help stop it. He finds the informant. There's an informant in there, and there's a mysterious package. So he's about to retrieve it, and he's attacked by one of either the terrorist or the officer. I can't remember who. And then he's saved by bullet jumping out of the concrete beneath him, and jumps into the body of the guy, the guy who was about to attack the protagonist. And the person who saved him is some guy also in armor who we can't see, who has an orange little like strap on his, or little keychain on his backpack. Keep that in mind. So the protagonist tries to escape the situation, but the terrorists end up taking him away. So he's in a train yard now, tied to a chair, and there's another agent who's dead. So they just rip out all his teeth, and they just terrorize and basically torture him for information. But the protagonist grabs a suicide pill and takes it, and then he wakes up around a month later, it's implied. A month later, like a bit of time later, and he's alive. And the suicide pill is a fake. So his handler, he's like, okay, I want to retire now because I'm technically dead. The handler's like, oh, you can't retire. You have to do this thing where you have to put your hands together, like almost like you're making them, like here's the church, here's the steeple, and you have to say the word Tenet. So protagonist goes through a pretty cool, like, subtle way of getting around, finds a way to get to a lab, meets a scientist. He shows her the gesture and the word, and she brings him to, like, a special part of the lab where she shows him a gun, and when he tries to shoot it, the bullet actually comes back from, like, the shot, even though it's empty, goes back from where it was shot to the gun. And that's the entropy. It's entropy, it's moving backwards. It's what she tells him. And because of that, there are 3 rules about this that we're introduced to. Things go backwards at the same rate as things going forward. Backward things still need action to actually move, so you have to think of dropping a bullet before it flies in your hand. And there's also and because they have to wear gloves in the beginning, there's radiation, and it's probably bad. Because she also mentions, like, yeah, if you get shot by an inverse bullet, you're going to die really painfully, because radiation. So she tracked where the bullets came from. The backwards one is from a weapons dealer from India, Sanjay Singh. Hope I said that right. So he's going to go over there to talk and get info, and his recruiter sends him Neil, who is played by Robert Pattinson. Also, the protagonist is played by John David Washington. So the two of them, Neil and protagonist, reverse bungee into the penthouse where Sanjay is, but right before he shoots the guy and gets him to talk, Sanjay's wife Priya does the same hand gesture and says Tenet. She's the weapons dealer, and she's a part of the group, which we later learn is called Tenet. So Priya, now they're working together, Priya's like, you need to talk to Michael Caine, who can get you to the guy who we need to start getting to know, or the guy who's possibly starting all this mess, which is Andrei Sator. And that man he has to meet is none other than Michael Caine for one scene. So Sator and his wife are basically estranged, and the protagonist can get to him through her. So the reason that she's with him right now is because she sold him a painting. She sold Sator a painting. Kat, her name's Kat. She sold Sator a painting, and the painting was a fake by a guy named Arepo. So when the protagonist goes to meet her, she's like, oh, hey, I have a copy of this painting from Arepo, and she's like, oh, and it's implied that she knows he's lying because it's implied that he's dead. So they meet up at this restaurant. The goons, Sator's goons arrive. They escort Kat away. And, you know, he sets her up to call her with like, oh, I'm going to call you when it's safe and I'm out of this. And she's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. And then the protagonist fights off the goons. And when the next day when Kat goes to see her son and say goodbye to him at school, the protagonist is there like, yeah, it's safe. And then she explains to the protagonist, that Sador is holding her hostage in revenge for the painting that's fake. So if she does a wrong move, she'll get arrested and she'll never see her son again. So he's like, oh, I'll help you fix that. I can get rid of the painting, and the blackmail, you just have to tell me more info about Sador and where to find it. So she's like, oh yeah, Sador helped pay for, you know, a company that is a safety deposit box tax haven with an airport in Oslo that they call a free port. And Kat believes that Sator's keeping the painting in the free port. So they think that's where Sator is getting his information from the future to make himself rich in this present timeline. So, because he's like a middleman between the present and the future. So the protagonist and Neil make a plan, mainly Neil, and they basically crash a plane into the free port and sneak around inside, which is probably one of the best scenes in the movie. As they enact their plan, they find a pair of strange rooms, and they go on one side. They both go on different sides. As the protagonist is investigating one of them, he's attacked by a mysterious stranger coming out of a weird circly like area, which is a turnstile, which I'll explain what that is in a bit. And this mysterious stranger is covered in black tactical armor, and he's fighting backwards. And at the same time, Neil's fighting and chasing down another man wearing the same kind of clothing. So there's a really cool fight scene, and then, you know, Neil fights the guy. It seems like from an angle he seems to get the helmet off the screen, and then he throws it back, and then he raises back to the protagonist to prevent him from killing the assailant, because like, we need to question this guy, but he allows the assailant to get away. And they also failed to retrieve the painting as well. So the protagonist goes up to meet with Priya, and she explains that the object in the room was called Turnstile, and this makes things go backwards. And it was invented in the future. So the protagonist goes to Italy to meet with Kat and tells her not to worry about the painting anymore. And he's like, hey, can you help me get to Sador? So they create a fake narrative of how they met. Sator confronts the protagonist because he thinks the protagonist is cheating on... It's his wife, Kat, is cheating on Sator with the protagonist. So the Sator's just like, in the dinner's like, yeah, like, you fuck my wife yet, you piece of shit? And then also like, how are you gonna die? But he's like, oh, I'm gonna kill you by making you shove your balls down your throat. You know, lovely man. But the protagonist asks Sator if he likes opera, which, remember at the beginning, and he's like, oh shit, I'm gonna let you live for now. I'm gonna talk to you about this. So, in the morning, Andres shows Kat the painting that protagonist could not destroy. She's extra pissy now. And then Sator and protagonist are talking about stealing plutonium-241, which is an ingredient that Sator does. Well, Sator says he's an arms dealer, and that's what the ploy is. That, you know, the protagonist's like, oh yeah, you're an arms dealer, I want to be an arms dealer, let's work together. But the truth is, Sator needs to go backwards, make stuff go backwards, or because you'll see what it is in a sec. So Kat tries to murder her husband by shoving him off the boat, and the protagonist saves him. So now Sator's like, oh, you shit, man, you saved my life, you real bro, let's work together. So, but Kat is pissed at protagonist for saving Sator, and, you know, he's like, he's more dangerous than you know, and I need to stop that, and she gives him a gun he gives her a gun to protect herself. So she goes back to the room, Andre starts to threaten her, and she's like, no, because if you hurt me, you're gonna piss off the guy who saved your life. And he's like, all right, I'll back off for now. So later that night, there's a message for Sator that arrives at his yacht, and the protagonist sneaks around but gets caught. Inside was like gold and some messages. And he's not killed because he's like, oh, I'll help you get the plutonium-241 in Belgium. So now protagonist and Neil orchestrate another heist, all without electronic or written messages. These a bunch of cars and fire trucks. It's really cool. They get the orange briefcase, and the protagonist opens it inside, and it's not plutonium-241. It's the strange device he saw before at the opera house. And Neil, who was kind of playing dumb this entire time about what the hell was going on, says the most dangerous thing in the world, and Sator pulls up in a backwards van. It's been inverted, and he's wearing a mask. And he threatens to kill Kat if protagonist doesn't hand it over, the package. So protagonist tosses the briefcase over another backwards car into some bushes. Sator escapes, but leaves Kat in the car and about to crash into traffic. Protagonist saves her, but because of that, him and Kat are caught. And Neil stays back to call in the cavalry. So here's the interesting thing. Kat is then dragged into a blue room, and the protagonist is dragged into a red room, which are right in front of each other, so they're seeing each other through a window. Sator, I'm messing up the pronunciation, I'm sorry. Sator emerges from the blue room wearing he was already wearing an oxygen mask, he's still wearing it. Well, he's not wearing the oxygen mask now, but Kat is, if I remember correctly.
No, it's the other way around.
Okay, never mind. No, he has the mask.
Yeah, he's wearing the mask.
No, she's wearing the mask.
No, she's not.
He's in the inverted room.
Yeah.
He's in the inverted room, so he doesn't need a mask because he's in the inverted room.
But when he comes in to be with protagonist, he's not inverted, so he's inverted when he's with Kat.
But in the blue room where it's inverted.
The blue room that it's inverted is not the regular room, or is not the normal room. It's the inverted room. Kat's.
Okay, it doesn't matter. So, yeah. Kat's dragged into the blue room, and the protagonist dragged into the red room, like I said. And the protagonist can't really understand the questions being asked because, Sator's talking backwards to him, and it's like translated back to him. And then Sator shoots Kat with an inverted bullet, and then he enters the red room without that mask, and before he can do much else than shout at the protagonist, Neil's cavalry arrives. And then we, the audience, see Sator enter the turnstile and then go back in the blue room, the same way he entered it before, but from this perspective, this interrogation is different because now we're seeing him shoot Kat in the beginning and then ask the question, so it's a reverse of what we saw. And it ends with him going to the BMW that contained trying to find the BMW that contained the briefcase. So Neil and there's other soldier guy, Ives, who's explained that Kat might not live long because remember the radiation that she was shot with, but the protagonist suggested they send her to the turnstile because that can undo the radiation because it's going backwards. So he goes inside the machine himself to prevent Sator from finding out where the object is, and now new rules are added because they go into the turnstile. And this is a really cool thing because, the red and the red was normal, the blue is inverted, and it helps us kind of grasp it. It was a really good use of color. Cinematography was cool.
You're rambling, love.
I want to say that in there. So, here's the rules. When you're backwards, hot is cold is hot, the energy is the opposite. Car fire, for example, you're going to freeze to death. It's kind of cool. And then while you're backwards, the things you interact with generally aren't. So cars need to be, basically, the car's going to be looking like it's going in reverse. It's a really cool effect. And you also need special oxygen to breathe because the air is inverted, or you'll suffocate. Also, it kind of feels weird. Like they said, the drive handling in the car is going to be weird. So the protagonist is inverted, goes to a BMW, drives it, and as he begins to make the getaway with the suitcase, Sator crashes the BMW and starts a fire with a gas leak, and the protagonist is freezing in the fire. He passes out. He comes to on a boat, and protagonist tells Neil that Sator has a package. Neil then's like, yeah, I'm part of Tenet. The object in the briefcase is the physical manifestation of an algorithm that, in short, would basically make the front, invert the whole world all at once. So the present of time and the inversion of the whole world would crash and collide and just undo everything. Like all of time. So the people of the future apparently believe that the death of the present is the key to their future because they can just they believe in the grandfather paradox, that if you can mess up grandpa in the past, but you're still gonna be alive in the present. So, it's like, okay, we need to get to Oslo because that's gonna there's another turnstile there back at the Freeport, and remember they're still going backwards in time. So here where this is going. They go to the Oslo Freeport, and they're back at that, and the protagonist puts on black tactical armor. The pair hurry to rush to Kat to turn to the turnstile, and they use that plane explosion from the past, or is it present now? Neil and protagonist used that they used to get in. Now they're using that to get in again, but this time to help save Kat. They fight again. Now we see that the protagonist in the beginning was actually fighting himself. And they basically use the turnstile perfectly. The plane goes off without a hitch, and we kind of know this because we saw it happen. And they start heading out. So all three of them are fine. And there's two confusing things about the movie. There's a grandfather paradox, that's what they believe, but there's also the things, there's also a possibility of what has already happened will happen. So it's a loop. This whole time thing is a big loop. And that's what they're banking on. So they're gonna take down Sator. Sator has terminal cancer and plans to end the world as he dies via suicide. And Kat thinks he'll try and do that in the past at their last good vacation, the same day as the opera attack. So it's been about 2 weeks now. We've been following these characters for 2 weeks. So let's go back to the beginning of the 2 weeks, and it all again ends where it began. So Neil and the protagonist decide to go steal the algorithm, and Kat decides to act as a distraction to talk to Sator, because Sator again went back in time he kept going back to the beginning, to the vacation, which confused me the first time I saw the movie. Kat decides to trade places with her past self because she fought her husband because she thought he was cheating on her because she saw a woman jump off a boat. And she left. But now this Kat comes in right after that saying, oh, or right before, no, sorry, never mind, I said this wrong. As she was leaving, as the original Kat was leaving, she saw a woman jump off the boat. She thought, oh, Sator's cheating on me. He really is a piece of shit. So the Kat who now knows what's going on, basically jumps in right at the part where Kat is starting to leave. And she goes, and Sator is confused because didn't past Kat just leave to spend time with their son? And she's like, oh, no, it was a nanny. I just want to apologize for earlier. He's cryptically-ish talking about his own demise. And Kat's playing dumb. And she's like, fuck it. I don't care anymore. Pulls out the gun. About to pull a, cool move. Give me a second. She pulls out the gun. And she's just like, yeah, I don't give a shit anymore. And she just kills him. And she throws the corpse off the boat and dives in. And she was the lady that past Kat was jealous of because she was free. And there was no actual cheating, I guess. So meanwhile, the protagonist and Neil and Ives go to Sator's secret home base in his hometown, and they're, now they're in the Tenet organization, and Neil's cavalry from earlier. So, let me go back, sorry. So, protagonist and Neil and Ives are now about to attack with a whole group of people, basically a small army, and there's basically a blue team and a red team. So red team's basically red team kind of goes backwards, experiences the fight first, then regroups with blue team and tells them what to do. Or it's more that red team, or this is the part that confused me. Or red team goes through, blue team's inverted so they know what happened in a sense, and then they it's just kind of like a plan of make sure the mission goes well according to plan. And it's a big distraction so that Ives and the protagonist get the algorithms. All pieces of the algorithms to prevent it from being buried in the bunker so that it goes to the future. Because if they can undo that, it's fine. And then they win. And the algorithm is taken place. So Ives says that whoever's going to retrieve it won't be leaving the battlefield. Is a quote. They get to the bunker, then there's the important doors locked. One of the henchmen's taunting him. And an inverted comrade with an orange backpack keychain helps unlock the door and gets shot. And that's what they, and that's how they, and then, protagonist kills the dude and the bad dude, and then they save the day. And before they die in the explosion, they're pulled out by Neil, who broke formation to help him escape the bunker by giving him a rope and get him out. So they all break apart the algorithm and split it. They each get 3, Ives, Neil, and protagonist. And they're like, we need to hide our portions, and then potentially kill ourselves to prevent the information from being leaked. And Ives is like, I'm going to hunt you down if you don't comply. And then this entire time throughout the movie, the protagonist is asking Neil, how did you find out about Tenet? How did you join? Who's the leader? Because he knows Neil knows who the leader is. And Neil's like, oh, it's you from the future. You create Tenet, and we've known each other for years. And he's like, this is the end of a beautiful friendship. And then as Neil smiles and walks away, because he's going to invert himself and be the guy who takes the shot and helps him get into the room, into the vault and the bunker, we see that Neil is having a orange keychain in his backpack. So the film ends with Kat being paranoid and calling an unknown number, telling whoever it is the time and location. And then we see Priya with a gun about to tie up loose ends. And then the protagonist gets in the car and he's like, oh, I'm the protagonist, and then I'm the one who's going to do all the loose ends, and then kills Priya and the driver, and that's the end of the movie.